Now, some people are skittish about him because of his support. His support comes from, amongst others, the two leading members, the two top leaders of the Democratic Progressive Movement. One is AOC, who endorsed him late in the contest, and I think that certainly played a role in increasing his momentum here in the final days of the campaign. So here is a glimpse of the chemistry between the two of them, and you can see in AOC's enthusiastic words just how supportive she is of Mamdani. This is B3, please.
I am here loud and proud to rank Zohran Mamdani #1 for mayor of New York City. And make sure that you do not rank Andrew Cuomo on your ballot. Don't do it, folks. We are going to rank our ballot. Zohran #1.
All right, very enthusiastic. Now, here is another big supporter of his who also endorsed late in the race, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, being asked what other Democrats should do and what they might do in the wake of his friend Mamdani winning the nomination. This is B8.
We saw the Democratic leaders have put out statements that were nice and kind, but not necessarily outright endorsements. Is it time for Democratic leaders to get fully behind him?
Well, the Democratic leadership, sadly, too often is tied to the billionaire class and their campaign contributions. What the Democratic leadership has got to do is make a choice. Which side are you on?
Interesting that Sanders is putting that pressure on. And as I said, Bill Clinton's already endorsed, Jerry Nadler, the congressman's endorsed, but some people haven't. Why haven't they? It's not because they don't think his focus on the working class is significant. And some of them don't disagree with the policy prescriptions he has. They have questions about some of his past statements related to particularly Israel. Here's one that gets a ton of attention. At a time when the United States and Israel and President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are working very closely in trying to deal with Iran. Here's what Mamdani said in the past about the prospect of if he were mayor and Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States for a UN meeting or something else. Here's what he would say. Here's what he says he's for. This is B1.
Would a mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Arrest Benjamin Netanyahu? That's not in keeping with what a lot of New Yorkers would say the way they'd like to treat the guy. But it is in keeping with his record as being pretty hostile towards Israel, pretty concerned about the Palestinian movement. That, of course, taps into the national question of the Democratic Party being defined by a pro-Palestinian wing. So in his interview with Jen Psaki, Mamdani tried to address this question of how he feels about anti-Semitism, how he feels about Jewish New Yorkers. Let's play that. B7, please.
My message is that I am looking to lead this entire city, to represent each and every New Yorker. And that representation is not contingent on whether or not someone votes for me or someone agrees with me, because the responsibility of a leader is to reach out to all 8.5 million people who call this city their home. And I know that Jewish New Yorkers, like Jewish Americans, are fearful in this moment of anti-Semitism. They're fearful, especially after the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado. And they're fearful also in conversations that I have heard myself about life in this city. And ultimately, it's through the conversations I've had with Jewish New Yorkers that I have developed a proposal for the Department of Community Safety that would include an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Because ultimately, we cannot simply say that anti-Semitism has no home in this city or no place in this country. We have to do more than talk about it. We have to tackle it.
So as a resident of New York, and as someone who thinks that this guy's going to be the mayor, I don't want him to be at war with the Jewish community or those who believe he's anti-Semitic. You listen to that answer. He said he's not. Let's take him at his word. Let's have the conversation. You know, he's not national security advisor. He's not Secretary of State, but the mayor of New York City does have foreign policy. He does, if he wins, he will have a lot of Jewish constituents. I think it's incumbent upon the media, those who are skeptical of him, and Mamdani himself to start to address these issues as he did there. I don't think you could listen to that and say on the face of it, he's hostile to the Jewish community or hostile to Israel, But he does have a different point of view. And it's a point of view that's very different than our other recent New York mayors, all of whom have been aggressively, some might say stridently pro-Israel. He's going to have to deal with that. The thing he said about Netanyahu, all right? He's going to have to deal with these things, and he should deal with them the way he did in that interview up front. This is an extraordinary story. If this guy becomes mayor, for so many reasons, there should be and there will be focus on his past statements of controversy. There should and would be focus on the reality of the policy positions he's taken on his core issues of helping the economy. There also should be focus, I think, on the extraordinary reality that a young Muslim American went from obscurity at the beginning of this race, he was at 1%, to becoming, I think, the next mayor of New York. And it matters not just because New York's a big city. And it matters not just because Democrats and Republicans are going to fight on the meaning and use him as a symbol. It matters because we're in a time of extraordinary change. We're at a time when the establishment is out and outsiders are in. When rising interest in younger politicians, not 80-year-olds, but people in their 30s and 40s, that's in. The older folks are being phased out. And it comes at a time when all the other issues in the world, the president's at NATO and he's being called daddy. We're dealing with Ukraine, we're dealing with Iran, we're dealing with trade issues. There's a lot going on in the world. But for most Americans, what matters is what this guy realized he needed to focus on, not just to win, but to govern effectively and address the needs of the people of this city, which, despite New York's oddness and difference, are the needs and wants of all the people around the country who are in the working class, which is, how do we stop this long-term trend away from things being unaffordable? This inflation that we went through in the Biden years and after COVID, this question of jobs, this questions of affordability of housing and education and everything else. This is the stuff of life for real people that has nothing to do with politics, but it is the politicians who play the biggest role, particularly on things like affordability of the basics, who we must look to solve the problems. And this guy says he can. Now, I have no idea whether, if he wins, and I do say again, I think he will win. I have no idea whether he'll be an effective mayor. I certainly hope he is. And you can't get away from the fact that he won't be the youngest mayor in New York City history, but he'll be one of the youngest, I think the second youngest. He'll be a Muslim mayor. And if you look at our big cities, that's pretty unusual. Here he is again with Jen Psaki on MSNBC talking about his faith and his family identity. This is B6, please.
Think about my grandmother Kulsum and my grandfather Yusuf and how they taught me from a young age that to be a good Muslim is to be a good person. It's to help those in need and harm no one. And ultimately, I've sought to do that over the course of my life, and especially in a time when the mere mention of being Muslim is seen as if it is a slur. It is also an opportunity for me to introduce the fact that being Muslim is like being a member of any other faith. It is believing and belonging in a notion of equality and in solidarity. And I know that it is so meaningful for the million Muslims that call New York City their home to see the fact that representation can be something that exists not just across the 5 boroughs, but also in City Hall.
Okay, that's lovely. You think about this city and its connection to its Muslim American population and the stresses caused in that after 9/11. Okay, 9/11, almost a quarter century ago, but still fresh in the mind of anyone who travels around the city, particularly going downtown to Ground Zero. And here we have a young Muslim American, not born in the United States, but assimilated in so many ways, a state elected official, now on the cusp of being the mayor of this city, speaking about his faith in such a lovely way, in such an accessible way. I think it's great. And I hope that he's able to become trusted as a friend of Israel, a friend of the Jewish community in this state and around the world, and also as a proud and articulate Muslim about his faith. All right, this is the time for people to recognize that I am not obsessed with New York. And I normally say we overcover New York, but this man and this moment is extraordinary. The movement that he is leading to get elected, the possibility that he could make this city better People all over the country, all over the world look to New York. Can the city be governed? And having the city be governed is not about, as I said before, helping the wealthiest, making it a friendly place for businesses, big businesses, Wall Street banks. It's not about giving tax breaks to sports team owners. Governing this city is about making it livable and affordable for working class people. Working class people in New York City face slightly different challenges, to be sure, in some ways, than working class people around the United States. But making cities affordable is a huge challenge. And this young man, whether you agree with his policies, whether you're suspicious about his views of Israel and Jews or not, this young man has the possibility to make New York great again. Our last two mayors have fallen short. Bill de Blasio and the current mayor, Mayor Adams, have fallen short in a range of issues. Rent is too damn high, as a great man once said. Food costs too much. Transportation costs too much. Being able to live in our cities, thrive, raise kids, it's incredibly important. And if you can do it here, as another great man once saying, you can do it anywhere. I want him to succeed. I want him to make the city livable and affordable for everyone.